Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends, and this week's comic book haul is very small. I actually only picked up 2 books, and this was a 5th week. We've had a lot of 5th weeks this summer into the fall, so for comic speak, that's when the days of the week fall that comics kind of ship 5 times in 1 month. In that 5th month, usually there's not a whole, or the 5th week, there's only a few books that usually come out. So this was that week. However, since I had a little extra time, I picked out 3 other books from my collection that I just wanted to talk about, maybe show them to you guys, and books that I really like and are good stories, maybe give a recommendation. So let's start out with the 2 books that I bought first. First one is Batman Annual number 4. And this is unfortunately not written by Scott Snyder. I mean, typically the annuals aren't anymore. I think he wrote the first one, which was the Mr. Freeze one, which was very good if you never read that one. But for the most part, nowadays they just use this as kind of filler for, like, I don't know, for 5th weeks and stuff like that. And James Tynion actually wrote this one. I'm not a huge fan of him. He usually just seems very wordy. He doesn't usually let the art kind of tell the story. The stories are very character driven, so not a huge fan of his writing, but he does seem very attached to kind of be the backup Batman guy whenever they need someone to do a fill-in story or do a small story at the end of a regular issue of the regular Batman series. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't recommend picking this up. I mean, I did because I do pick up Batman, and I don't know, I just figured I'll read it. Batman is my favorite character, which is probably why I did pick it up. But when you think $5 for an annual, it's kind of expensive, so I probably wouldn't recommend this to your casual fan. The thing I will say about annuals before I move on, I remember when I was a kid, they were a lot more special. I mean, annuals were usually had crossover events tied to them. Back in the old days, they had like Armageddon 2001 in DC, Atlantis Attacks in Marvel, and they did a whole bunch of even smaller crossovers years later where Marvel was good at doing maybe 3 or 4 different stories over the course of the summer. But it's kind of like one of those things, like summer's here, you're going to get the summer annuals, and they were 40 pages with a thick spine, and they weren't that expensive. I forget what they used to run, probably $2.99 or something like that for most of them back in like '89, I'm thinking. So yeah, they seem special, and now they just kind of seem like something they put out for 5th weeks and just when they holidays and stuff like that, when they don't want to ship the regular books. So yeah, is what it is, I guess. All right, next book. We'll go from that to a definite pickup if you haven't been reading it. Justice League number 44. And this is the last book that Jeff Johns is still writing. He's taken on, obviously, obligations for the film and television side of DC. And, yeah, so he deals with that more than writing, which is kind of sad because he's definitely my favorite writer in comics. If you haven't read his work before, Justice League's amazing, and I would definitely recommend going back and reading his Green Lantern stuff. He did a huge run on Green Lantern, starting with the miniseries that brought Hal Jordan back, and then did the regular series, did Blackest Night. Blackest Night was really kind of part of a trilogy as far as Sinestro War. Blackest Night was the second part, and then the third part was Brightest Day. Incredible stuff. I mean, his work on Flash is amazing. He did a lot of great work with Teen Titans. Just lots of stuff. So anything, if you see Jeff Johns' name on it, it's going to be a good read. Don't be afraid to pick it up. Yeah, I can't say enough good stuff about this. Read this issue. This is part 4 of the Dark Side War. So if you pick this up, granted, you're jumping into the middle of a storyline, so you may want to be able to hopefully pick up the first 3 parts or else wait for the trade. But if you aren't on Justice League, try to jump on, even if it's after this story. It's just that good. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's amazing. All right, so those are the 2 books I picked up this week. So 3 books I thought I'd showcase to you guys that are part of my collection, that some of my favorites, I guess. And I'll do this when there's slow weeks, or maybe I'll try to make it a segment if I can shorten if I have a haul that's not too long, maybe I'll make it a weekly segment. Let me know in the comments below if you like this. So the first one I want to show you is Thanos Quest Book 1. This is by Jim Starlin with art by Ron Lim. This is part 1 of a 2-part storyline, and this is kind of a prestige book. You can see it's a thicker book. I really need to get this thing boarded. I don't have a board in this, but I have had this copy for a while. But this is the story that takes place before the Infinity Gauntlet, and this is actually the story of Thanos going out and getting all the gems, and it sets up the Infinity Gauntlet. So when you read the Infinity Gauntlet, and probably a lot of you guys have read that at some point, You read that story, and there's stuff that occurs in this story that is kind of underneath the events of Infinity Gauntlet. Then at some point they come to light. So if you read this first, which is really what I think was intended by Jim Starlin, who also wrote Infinity Gauntlet, you really get the full story. And this is in some ways kind of the fun story, because I like a lot of the stuff that happens before Infinity Gauntlet, like this story, and then also the run in Silver Surfer, where Silver Surfer confronts Thanos before he even goes to Earth and starts doing all this crazy stuff that he did in Infinity Gauntlet. It kind of kicks it off. So some of those preliminary stories are really strong and really amazing. So this is awesome stuff. I mean, it's Thanos just going out there. He's trying to get these Infinity Gems because he wants to make himself more powerful so that Death will see him as an equal, because he's in love with her. And that's what this whole story is about, is really him trying to impress this girl. Happens to be the embodiment of Death, but there you have it. And and it's all about what he does to get these gems and how he dispatches people and steals them and what have you. So really, really awesome book. Read this. I don't know how much this goes for now. It's probably one of those books that's going up because of the Infinity War movie that's coming out. I'm sure you can pick this up in some sort of trade with both of them, or some sort of hardcover, I'm sure. But check it out. It is very good. It's an older book, so it's going to be written in a little bit of an older style. It came out in late 80s, but pick it up. So I want to, speaking of movies and Marvel, Guardians of the Galaxy, this is Ebden and Lanning's first issue. So this is, I don't know what volume this is of Guardians, but this is basically what the people that follow the movie universe consider the beginning of the movie version of Guardians of the Galaxy. So you can see on the cover, you even have Peter Quill, Rocket Raccoon, Gamora, and Thrax the Destroyer, or Drax the Destroyer, sorry. And everyone pretty much except Groot's right there. A couple other characters, of course, on the cover, but if you read this storyline, there's a ton of characters. The team's basically split into two teams, but this is the first time you actually see some of the characters from the movie in Guardians of the Galaxy as members of the Guardians of the Galaxy. So this kind of kicks it off. This book has gone up in value quite a bit, as you could imagine, because of the hype of the movie. I don't even know what it goes for now. I know at one point it was going for over $100. But pick up the trades on this one, because it's really well written. Ebden and Lanning are great at telling sci-fi stories, and this is like an epic space opera that they tell here. So awesome stuff. Another one of my favorites. Just wanted to kind of show that to you guys. Now I'm going to go back a little bit older. So I did one from like the 80s. We got one from a little more contemporary. Now I'm going back to, I think this is 70s, I believe. So this is Man-Thing number 3, and a little bit older book here. Not perfect condition. You can see there's a little bit of color bleed up here in the corners. But overall, I mean, the spine's real good on this book. The staples are real good. They're not rusted or anything. I mean, it was definitely stored, when I bought it, it was definitely stored in a humid location. Like, it had that kind of nasty smell to it. It's a little better now, but I think that's the reason you get a little color bleed, especially along the top there. But overall, it's actually in pretty good shape. So the reason this is one of my favorite books, this is the first appearance of a character, Full Killer. Full Killer is probably not a very popular or well-known Marvel character, but back in 1990, I think it was, 1991, there was a little bit of a revival of him. He had a 12-part, I think it was 12-part miniseries, or 10-part miniseries, showcasing that character. And it was actually really cool, especially for that time period. And it was one of the first times, or at least at that point, that Marvel actually had to run an issue without the approval of the Comics Code, just because of the violence that was in the storyline. But it's a very unique story. He's a very unique character. There's actually been like 3 or 4, I think there's been like 4 or 5 now, Full Killers. But unfortunately, they never seem to, I don't know, figure out what to do with this character. He was a Spider-Man villain for a little bit. He's made some appearances here in Man-Thing. He was kind of an anti-hero. They tried to give him the push in the 90s, sort of like Punisher and Wolverine, but he didn't quite get there. Then they kind of brought him back not that long ago as a really totally different type of character, a little more like ground level. I don't know. He's a cool character. I hope someday they figure out what to do with him. And, you know, all it's going to take is the right writer. I think my favorite version of this character is actually not the guy that appears in this issue as the Fool Killer, but I think it's the third Fool Killer who had the 90s miniseries. You know, and basically, if you're not familiar with the character, what he is, I mean, think Punisher, basically, but he has a gun that disintegrates people, basically turns them into ash, and instead of just, I guess, killing criminals, he decides who is a quote-unquote fool, and he takes them out, basically. So, I mean, these could be people who are just greedy people that got away with crimes, you know, that type of thing. Kind of, you know, think Punisher, Daredevil, sort of, but just, you know, more, I guess, more so like Punisher is really what he does. A little more flamboyant. He usually leaves calling cards at his crimes, and he'll tend to like warn the people he's coming for them, that type of thing, you know, because of the things that they've done. You know, so interesting character. He himself is pretty crazy and kind of comes off really being more of a villain, which is why I think he was a pretty cool Spider-Man villain when they went that route with him. But, you know, for what it's worth, pretty cool book. As far as pickups, I wouldn't recommend necessarily going out and picking this up for Fool Killer. The appearances are pretty short in this issue, and actually he has a few more Man-Thing appearances, but they're very small. So unless you're a huge fan of that particular character, I don't know if I'd say go pick this up or anything like that. But if you are, this is kind of where it started, and I kind of find that interesting. It's just an interesting key to have, and you know, not that I go out there and try to get every key, but keys that I think are cool. This is one of them that I think is cool. It's probably not worth that much, but hey, there you have it. So I guess that's the haul for the week. Like I said, let me know in the comments below what you think of, you know, bring me showing some of the older books, some of my favorites, because I can certainly do that whenever the haul isn't too long. Or maybe I can eventually make different separate videos with those. So let me know what you prefer. But as always, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. Have a good day.